And I'm also especially grateful that he is here at Fordham and has continued to teach the students at Fordham University and students in North America what life in the Caribbean and what the education, what riches we have in the Caribbean population. So in that sense, I'm grateful that he's here. Next, Professor Hilton White.
I have no excuse to make. I'm glad about the time. You said how many? 3 minutes? You said?
10 minutes.
I could use less. See, I have left school a long time now. When I hear Mr. London talking about 1960-something, and I remember leaving that institution in 45 during the war, I realized that I'm with the fossils now. But to talk about capitalism and slavery from an educational viewpoint is, in my view, I'm taking it from the back because I want to get that off first, that I thought in reading the book and studying it with some students that there were elements in the book that could satisfy historical surveys. I thought there was a sumptuous amount of economics there. I read into it and I've quoted from it to deal with the sociology of the West Indies in the time. Anthropology is there. There's the psychology of the people who run the banks, etc. Definitely geography is a part of it. So I'm saying that these 6 elements are always there. Any time you read any part of the book, you can get that. There were conceptual values that included party politics and how individuals and their perspectives have grown out of aggrandizement. You can see that there is a difference in what has happened in Trinidad since this book. Then we have heard of his comment on Master D. Dunn. This was not in the book, but it came out in his lectures. I wish I had the time to talk about the establishment of the University of Woodford Square. It's a little distant from Toco, but it's not so far from San Fernando. And we encouraged him, and I say we meaning those of the people who thought we were going to have a PNM at some time. We encouraged him to come to San Fernando, and he established there the College of San Fernando. But he did more than that. In San Fernando, he had a 2-week, every 2 weeks he came to a Friday night class at Napari Training College and met, so to speak, the graduates of the college. And there he met and talked over the book, The Capitalism and Slavery. This was basic to every turning point in his discussions, and we found many things that could make us agree with what George Lamming said. I'm talking a few of these because I've read what some people said and thought about what happened in Trinidad. All of this came out of the book. The force of education and political organization was something that was eminently in the mind of Dr. Williams when he began the PNM. It was a turn of discovery, which is the beginning of action. Dr. Williams started with popular education, and this, I thought, he used his knowledge culled when he got the data for the book and his experience elsewhere, as well as what he learned when he worked at Howard University and what he experienced when he spoke with people like DeWitt, DeWilton, Rogers, and the deceased, both of them deceased now, John Donaldson. These are the people who began the TECA. And we claim that that was the organization that really influenced him to come back to Trinidad at all. There was news, we thought. And Lamin said that Dr. Williams was able to turn history of the Caribbean into gossip. Everything became news. This is university talk. Slavery, colonization, and the forgivable deception of metropolitan rule, the sad and the inevitable awareness of the native production. These characterized the Williams lectures as whispers which everyone was allowed to hear, and rumor, which experience had established as truth. Ultimate value of the popular education has become an achievement of genius. And I agree with Lamin that Williams is already history, will always be history, and the fact is that no West Indian politician has ever exposed himself so consistently and completely to the gravest of all political risks. Williams always took the risk of refusing to talk down to an electorate. This may seem strange, ladies and gentlemen, but it is a fact. I like the comments of C.L.R. James. Some of you may know the name and may have met him. This is a convention appraisal talking about capitalism and slavery. James thought that Williams emerged with certain convictions, and they remained in his life, whatever he said and did, however he felt about anybody and anything. Capitalism and slavery gave him these features, he thought. Bankruptcy of the sugar-based economy, the West Indies as a football for the colonial powers, emancipation from above, or, if you wait too long, you'll have, as the first speaker this evening said, slave revolt from below. Emancipation had to come some way. These ideas were prevalent in Europe in 1932 and to 39. Studies in West Indian history gave Dr. Williams faith in the masses of the people. This, I think, is very important because it qualified him to do what he did so well, to set up a party that went through 30 years without a change. Am I right? It's 30 years? Or thereabout. What? 25? That's almost 30. And what is most important, as James said, he had thorough grounding in the fundamentals of British parliamentary democracy. Ladies and gentlemen, it's important that I put this in there because I wanted to get this off. Do you know that it is said that the author, Dr. Williams, in his attempt to place historical perspective and to put it in relationship between early capitalism as exemplified by Great Britain and Negro slave trade, Negro slavery, the general colonial trade of the 17th and 18th centuries was a work of art. One commentator put the science into the art. We found that the Industrial Revolution for historians is a big portion of history. And with that in focus, details of capitalism and slavery are among events which preceded the Industrial Revolution. And as Williams would say it, glares at the heritage which was left upon civilization up to the 20th century. This is strictly an economic study of the role of Negro slavery and of the slave trade in providing capital which financed the Industrial Revolution in England, and of mature industrial capitalism in destroying the slave system. We have a study of English economic history and a study in West Indian and Negro history. The problems of the old slave colonies of the West Indies are comparable to the descriptions in a book which is written by Captain E.W. Daniel, but not as concise as the Williams book. And one man wrote a play that took the screen. I think we call it Roots. But there was comparison between what happened between Haiti and the British Islands and what happened with the Great French War, which weakened the islands, especially the British Islands. The abolition of the slave trade followed by the abolition of slavery, emanated, as it were, from the rising standard of political ethics in Britain. D.W. Brogan notes that Dr. Williams' view the works of men like Clarkson not as unimportant. There was a paradox he referred to, the reversal of the roles. The abolitionists deplored the use of slave-produced sugar in the West Indies, or from the West Indies. But no one proposed to stop the use of slave-produced cotton from the United States of America. Williams thought that the passions of wickedness did not spin the plot. What spun the plot was the thought of money. The slave system was tolerated, defended, and praised as long as it was profitable. When it ceased to be profitable, the people went out of business and gradually took a low profile. Roots, what we were talking about in the 80s, was great. Thank you. But let us note this. Great Britain was founded, great businesses based on the profits of the slave system. Wilberforce was virtually disposed of as an abolitionist, quite opposite to the impression given by Daniel and other writers. So from the 30s to the 60s, students look at the Williams writing and make the point that society is made of the fabric that makes one morally appalled. Williams claimed that the infrastructure is more important than the superstructure. That's how they functioned. The economic base was greater than the ideologies which provided that base. He cites examples of families that did well under false appearances, justifying the scriptural injunction, where your treasure is, there your heart will be also. Ladies and gentlemen, it's quite a challenge to compress a lot of material into 5 or 6 minutes. But the book exposed details that may be considered appalling. There was not a single great ship owner at Nantes between 1714 and 1789 that did not buy and sell slaves. I'm saying this because as a black person myself, as a Negro myself, I realize that my people and I have all been treated one way or the other. And I sometimes begin to wonder if we are still not in the market. Somebody wants to sell, and they look for somebody to sell in the process. If anything happened with the Williams study in the book Capitalism and Slavery, we can feel satisfied that the development of economic forces to understand merchants and industrialists, how they work with politicians to get something out of what is to be done by each, and by each becoming a profiteer in the business. We think of the political and moral ideas of an age that must be examined in the closest relation to economic development. Maybe it is worn out with interest, but when we think of bankruptcy, we think that it impacted in a special way to prevent some people from being what they wanted to be. But even though they went out with bankruptcy, they still remained as obstructionists and disruptive persons. Clarity of aim and purpose in some actions are obscured because the interests to which those purposes were structured would remain almost hidden for some time, and for some reason the correspondence would be no longer in existence to cause any real material change. We're saying this because it's difficult perhaps in the 90s to think of things that were written way back then and related to people in the 17th and 18th centuries. The people who are historians, who have spoken and who will speak, will make it a lot clearer to you. Anyhow, if I can display a befuddled self, it is because the book has been so captivating that the small mind cannot really absorb it fully.
Thank you, Professor Hilton White, and certainly we don't get a sense of a small mind at all. Thank you.